Alright, so in today's episode of Thrifting Cookbooks, to try new recipes, we are using, again, another one of these Better Homes and Gardens cookbooks. I have 3 of these, actually. This one's a little bit newer, and I got this out thrifting quite a while back. This one is the 1996 edition, and we are going to be making today some of these French dip sandwiches. Now, the first thing that I want to do is make some homemade French bread in my bread machine. I'm going to use the bread machine to do all of the work as far as the dough cycle goes, and then I'm going to pull it out and make little small loaves for our French dip sandwiches. So the first thing that I need to do is get 1 cup and 2 tablespoons of water in the bread machine. And then 1 teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of sugar, which I already have measured out here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that in there. 3½ cups of bread flour. I'm going to use this little thrifted butter knife to just kind of measure off the top here. Get my 3½ cups measured in there. 1. And on top, I'm just going to put 1½ teaspoons of bread machine yeast. And when it calls for bread machine yeast, this is what I use right here. Now I'm going to put this just in my bread machine, lock it in place. Okay, so there is a cycle for the French bread loaf and all, but I only want to do the dough cycle, so I'm going to choose number 8 because I'm going to pull it out, shape them into smaller. I don't want it to bake in here as like one big loaf. I want to pull it out, make little French loaves, like little individual ones. So once the dough cycle starts, I'll pull this out and do that. So I'm just choosing the dough cycle. So I'm gonna get that started. Okay, so to make this recipe, it calls for an onion, a clove of garlic minced up, some butter. It calls for beef broth, which I have some canned, but I don't want to use that for this recipe. So I'm just going to use some of this freeze-dried powdered beef broth and just make some with some filtered water out of my Berkey. Now, it also calls for either dried thyme, marjoram, or oregano crushed. Well, I don't have any of those just individually, but I do have this Italian seasoning here that has all of those in it. So I'm just going to use this Italian seasoning today. I normally use one from Azure Standard, but it doesn't have all of the ones that I need in it, and I'm trying to finish up using this one. So I think I'm just going to use a little pinch of this today because it has all of them in there, the thyme, the marjoram, and the oregano crushed. So we'll just use maybe like half of what it calls for. It calls for half a teaspoon, so we'll probably just use 1/4 of a teaspoon of this and just go with that. It calls for ground black pepper, and then it calls for 3/4 pound thinly sliced cooked beef. So what I have is actually some sirloin steak that we had on Valentine's Day, and we had some left over. Some of it's a little too pink for my family. I like it like that, but they like it a little more well done. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use up this beef. I'm going to slice it very thinly and use this for our French dip sandwiches. And it also calls for 4 French style rolls split, which you've already seen that I've already started working on and making those. So now let's take all of these ingredients. I'm going to go over to my cast iron skillet and get started making this recipe. Now I try to stay really true to the recipe so that if one of y'all are trying to, find this cookbook and look it up, I try to stay true to the recipe so that if y'all do try to fix this, you will kind of have my, true review over what I used. So everything I'm going to be using is the same as the recipe, like I said, except for we'll be using dried thyme, marjoram, and oregano. We're just going to kind of cut it down in half. So let's get to the cast iron and get busy. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and turn this on so my cast iron can be getting hot, warming up for cooking. I hope that you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. It calls for 1 tablespoon of butter. So I'm just going to kind of cut that out of my block. Go ahead and get that warming up. Set this to the side. So what is everybody else having for Sunday lunch or supper? I'd be interested to know what's everybody else cooking on this beautiful Sunday. It's nice and sunny here in Texas, not too cold, so it's perfect weather today. All right, and if you are cooking with cast iron, go ahead and get you a little mitt or your little handle glove thing here so you do not burn yourself, because you will if you're not careful. Ask me how I know. So while that butter is getting warm and the pan is getting hot, I just want to go ahead and cut this small onion. It says to slice it and then separate the rings. So that's what we're going to do right now. Get this skin, and I keep my onion peels and I put them in broth, and it makes the most beautiful broth. Like if you're making chicken stock or beef broth, if you'll add your, leftover carrot peels and stems you cut off the end and your onion peels, oh, it just makes some beautiful broth. So I'm just going to put those to the side so I can deal with those in a little bit. And then I want to slice my onion like it said in rings. Okay, so separate into rings is basically just this. So like once you slice it, it will kind of look like this. Just want you to separate it like so. I hope it's focusing. I can't even see. Okay, so I've got my onion in there, and then it says to do 1 clove of garlic. So just chop it up. But I'm going to give this onion just a minute because I don't want my garlic to burn. If you let it burn and scorch, if you get it, let it get too hot, it can be pretty bitter, and we don't want that. All right, and while I'm waiting on those onions to do their thing, I got my garlic cut up and ready, and I'm going to go ahead and get my beef sliced up so that that's done when I'm ready for it. And as you can see here, it's just leftover steak. So I'm going to kind of cut some of the fat, gristly part off that we won't want that on our sandwich. So, and just get this very thinly sliced up. Alright, these onions are pretty much done. So I'm going to throw the garlic in there because it will not take the garlic long at all. Go ahead and get that stirred around. And oh, if there was smell-o-vision, y'all, it smells so good. There's just nothing like cooking onions and butter. I'm sorry, but that is just like the best smell. If you're trying to get a smell out of your house that you don't like, and you like onions, cook you an onion and some butter, and I can promise you your whole house will smell so good. And we're going to turn the fire down. We got that garlic going, and I'm going to get my broth ready to pour in here because that's what goes in next. Okay, so now it says to pour in your broth. I went ahead and mixed my powdered broth. So I poured in my broth. Now I'm going to put the seasoning in. I'm definitely just measuring with my heart right here. You can use a measuring spoon if you want, but sometimes I just don't have time for that. It is Sunday after church and my people are hungry. So let me get this going. And it says your pepper. So I'm going to go ahead and get the pepper in there, also measuring with my heart there. All right, we're supposed to bring this to a boil. So let me turn it back up a little bit. Bring to a boil and then reduce heat. And we're going to simmer it uncovered for 10 minutes. So I wanted to show y'all all that beautiful leftover steak that we're going to be using. So yummy. So definitely utilize your leftovers if you have them for a recipe like that. So if you're looking through cookbooks, think about what you might have that's leftover. Instead of going and buying more meat, I'm just going to use this and turn it into a different meal. It's definitely a good way to use up your leftovers. All right, so I'll meet y'all back here once this has come to a boil and it's been simmering for 10 minutes. Okay, so it has been 10 minutes, and now it says to just add the beef. And our beef is pretty much cooked, which the recipe does call for cooked. But because some of it was a little more rare than my family likes, I'm going to let it, you know, finish cooking to their liking. So it says to put it back in here, bring it to a boil, and then once it is to a boil, you're supposed to do the same thing. Reduce the heat and let it simmer for 5 minutes, which I'm going to check my beef after 5 minutes and make sure that it's, you know, the doneness, is that even a word, doneness that my family likes. So that's what I'm going to do. So let me get this back up to a boil And I'll meet y'all back here when this is all ready to put on our freshly made French style buns and serve. Okay, so now that this is reduced down, I let it go for about 10 minutes, just on low. It says to remove the beef slices and the onions and put them on your little individual French bread rolls. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut these beautiful French style buns. Supposed to be rolls, I'm gonna call them buns. Y'all see what the inside looks like. Go ahead and put some meat on one. I don't think my husband will want the onions, so I'm just gonna put him a bunch of beef and see if he wants, a lot of times he'll want lettuce and tomatoes on his, but I just eat mine with the meat and the onions and stuff, so I'll go ask him. But I want to go ahead and get all the meat on there for his sandwich and let him give y'all a little review also. So I'm gonna go see if he wants some lettuce and tomato or anything like that. So now I'm gonna make mine, and I put all the things on mine. And for side dishes, I do have some leftover baked potatoes that I'm warming up, and like a tossed salad, just a little side salad. So I'm gonna load mine up, put me some of the juice in here so you can dip your sandwich. That's what the recipe also says to do. And then I'll come back and let y'all know what we thought about this. Okay, I'm about to try the sandwich. I'm excited for this one. Dip it in a little bit of that sauce. That is good. Thank y'all so much for spending some time with me in the kitchen, going through a thrifted cookbook and making a thrifted recipe with me. We hope that y'all enjoyed. We hope that y'all have a wonderful evening. We love y'all, and we'll see you back here Tuesday with a brand new video.